Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdah la sharika lah. Al-Hannan wal-Mannan badi'u as-samawati wal-ard. Wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Amma ba'd. I begin in the name of Allah, the one and only creator, Lord and sustainer of this universe, bearing witness and testifying that there is no one worthy of worship, that there is no deity or God worthy of worship except Allah, the one and only, the most perfect, the sublime, the majestic, the king, the Lord of the universe, the sustainer, the nourisher. We as Muslims, we would like to invite you to come away from the worship of false gods, to reject and abandon and shun the worship of man, woman, flag, pop stars, nations, idols, whatever it might be. Instead, we invite you to come back to the worship of your Lord, of your Creator, of your God, who is the one and only God that exists. There are not multiple gods. The idea that God has children, the idea that God has a father or a son or has wife and children is not something that you believe in, because in your heart and your mind you know there is only one God and there can only be one God. You know that. You know that there is not three gods. And you know that having multiple gods doesn't make sense. The universe demonstrates to you that it is under the operation of one God. Had there been more than one God, do you know what's going to happen? The universe will come to a ruin, a collapse. The universe as it stands now will not exist if there are multiple deities. Even if supposedly they were agreeing to each other, they would not agree on a universe like this. In the last few weeks, I have demonstrated to you with examples and illustrations why there can only be one creator of our universe. Today is your chance and opportunity to ask us questions about this, to challenge us and to refute if you think that there are multiple deities in our universe. So today I will take your concerns, your questions, your criticisms. If you indeed believe there are more than one God, and that is a rational concept. Because as Muslims, we invite you to think rationally. We invite you to think with your intellect, reason with your intellect, and come to the realization that there are no other choice but to submit and surrender your will to the will of only one creator. That is the message number one. The second message that I'm going to talk about is the youth culture. Is how it has becoming a challenge for us to deal with the youth. Today's youth have a 5-second attention span. Did you know that? Or even less. So I'm going to talk about Generation Z or Generation Z or the Tittok Generation, and what this generation is making us rethink our stance with our youth in our society. If you know about Generation Z or Generation Z? Anyone? A few. How many of you understand what this Generation Z stands for in terms of their beliefs, ideologies, in terms of their character traits? Do you know there are 3 essential character traits of this generation? Those of you who do not understand this demographic or cohort-based analysis of generations, from about 1996, those who are born after that, these are the Generation Z. The Generation Alpha that precedes that is about from 2006 onwards. So we are dealing with youth in their prime who are Generation Z, which came after the millennials and the Generation X. How many of you have TikTok or know about TikTok? Generation Z, 60% or more of them are consumers, users of TikTok. 2/3. So immediately you realize we are talking about a generation of youth, a youth culture, in which 2/3 of them, they consume TikTok, they use TikTok. I didn't know about TikTok, but it is essential for us to know what is this social media. You've heard about Instagrams and Snapchats. You use WhatsApp, Facebook and YouTube, don't you? Those of you Asians, you use WhatsApp to call abroad because it's free. That's how you use it most. Those of you who want to connect with your friends and want to authenticate yourself, your identity, you write on Facebook. Those you want to share your authentic expression, you go into Snapchat and Instagrams, right? But what happens in TikTok? You just swipe. Constant swiping. And if you like something, you try to watch it. 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 5 seconds. If you don't like it, you swipe and you go to the next content. These billionaire corporate industries who have made TikToks, they know how to attract you, the youth. They know how to produce a system, a platform in which you can create content easily without difficulty, giving you the power to create authentic content that can be endorsed by the like-minded people. Is there any dislike button in TikTok? There isn't. Do you know why? Unlike some other platform, do you know why TikTok doesn't have a thumbs down or a dislike button? Because it's all about the positive vibe, giving you the credibility, the confidence to create and validate about what you do and what you see. So what happens? What do we see? Most of the users, as I said, are youth, teenagers. And what are they doing? Are they generating content in which they're saying, you know what? There is a global warming happening. Look at our politicians, how they are ruining our society. Or are they creating content in which they're saying, this is how we invest in renewable energy? Hardly any of those contents. But they have that feeling within them that this is how it should change. What kind of contents are they producing? Trying to be as naked as possible and show yourself to the world and your friends or people that you didn't even know. They like it, they love it, and then you see 500,000 people liked your semi-nakedness. What does that do to you? It gives you validation, and you think this 500,000 people or 1 million people, they don't think what I'm doing is stupid or wrong or sinful. They like it. So you build up your confidence and you generate credibility, and that gives you the impetus, this stimulus to produce even more. So you put on your leather bikinis, whatever, and G-strings, whatever, to produce more contents so people can like more. That's what teenage girls are doing. The boys too. These are what it has become, to the level where it's all about you unknowingly, the exploitation of your sexuality. And yet you don't even realize that as a youth, because you have adrenaline, all these hormones and chemicals running through your body, and you feel, wow, look at that. People love my body, my dress. That's what you think, right? People love the way you are acting or behaving and so on. And you do silly things as well, and people laugh and like. Things which are silly, 500,000 likes. It gives you the validation to do even more silly things. So TikTok, one of the social platforms, gives you to authentically express yourself. And guess what? You come along and you come out as, you know what? Today I feel like I'm a woman. A boy says, I think I'm a woman. A girl says, I think I'm a boy. Even a 4-year-old, 5-year-old are supposedly now allowed in school to change in their thinking and say, you know what, I feel like a girl today. A 5-year-old. A boy could say that, and the teachers won't be able to do anything. That's the generation Alpha. But let's talk about generation Z still. This TikTok generation, they can authentically express themselves, and they feel happy because other people are validating them. And the other people, they get motivated by them too, and they start producing content. Remember what I said? There are 3 essential characteristics sociologists, people who study demographics, change of culture, they've come up to at least 3 essential characteristics. This generation tries to have entertainment in their own way, expressing authentically what they like and dislike. Number 1. Number 2, they do not want to be told how to entertain themselves. You can't tell them to go and play football, have some fun, because they don't take your word for it anymore. They wanted to be entertained by their own terms and express their own identity authentically. That means there will be a culture in which the youth will have a mindset unlike the generations before. They will think in a way outside the way you are thinking. You are thinking in a way which is within the boundary of a social norm. They will break that social norm. They will break it. and they will bring about their own social norm, what they think is how it should be. Have you seen some youth coming over? You just ask them how they feel about the world, how they feel about politics, how they feel about governments and their policies. Some of them, those who have matured a bit, they start thinking about how to connect to others to make social change. Not only have entertainment, but to make social change. That means they're trying to connect to the others of a like-minded nature. This is another characteristic. To connect to the other who are of the like-minded nature, so that they can connect with each other and think about how they can bring about change in society, or in politics, or in governments. But unfortunately for them, which they don't realize is, they are being controlled and governed by the social media, which they are consuming and using to connect to others. They don't realize that. Because this TikTok platform, for example, is generating contents which are technically unlimited. So they have built in an anticipation within the mindset of the TikTok users, this Generation Z, that you know what? You will never get bored, there's always something. Just swipe with your thumb and you get contents. And they keep generating contents. In that way, this generation is hooked to this media platform. That's how you hook them. They cannot come out of it. The one who uses TikTok and has 1 million likes, it will be difficult for them to come out because they are hooked by the platform. Not realizing that they're spending billions of dollars understanding your mindset. Do you think the owners of TikTok don't spend millions and billions of dollars to see how they can market to you, the youth? That's what they're doing. That is why they're giving you a platform which is so easy to make content. You don't have to even go outside and then download your videos. It's there embedded within that social media platform. So let's leave it there for now, and we'll perhaps talk about the other characteristic later. But I want to wrap up with the ones I've given you to think. How do we as parents, how do we as a generation before this youth generation, the Generation Z, how do we connect with them, to engage with them in a meaningful way, so that they better themselves in this life and in the hereafter? Especially when we have understood that they have a 5-second attention span. Do you know what's going to happen, or what is happening? This generation, even though they're techno-savvy, techno-naive, they know how to use these programs. Let me give you an example why I say how it's widespread. Not in UK and Europe only. Where I'm from, in the Indian subcontinent, right? There's a few countries there. Someone from our relatives, a girl from a village, got married through TikTok. Can you believe that? We are talking about a third world country. If it's still on a developing country, okay, let's be charitable. That's the reality, by the way. Getting married through TikTok, there. What about here? So what is happening? People are consuming this in such a way. is controlling their lives. That father who was in abroad, elsewhere, had no control of his daughter. He had to succumb. He had to agree, because otherwise his daughter would go in a different way to get married to that boy, right? So this generation, because of the way they consume, every time they flick a video, they don't like it within the title, they go to the next one and the next one. What this has done, it has reduced the attention span. They will find difficulty in putting their attention, giving their attention in school and in class, because they don't want to hear a lecture 45 minutes long. They are not interested in reading books and literature and stories and poems. Do you know why? Because it's all about video contents, music, which I didn't talk about. They consume music, sexualization, and dance, all these videos. Anything that feeds with their entertainment within their youth culture. So what is going to happen? Even though they're techno-savvy, would they be able to grow up in a way their vocabulary will be quite expanded and broad? No, because the vocabulary will be very limited because they don't read. If you don't read, your vocabulary, your language will be only the languages that your friends, your colleagues that share in TikTok. That's all. So it is going to create a generation that would not be able to express themselves in words, but only in pictures and videos. So, the challenge to us is this: how do we then make leaders from this generation? How do we safeguard this generation being poisoned, from being poisoned in their morality, in their ethics, in their ideology? Because they will not concentrate or give time to the worship of their Creator. They would rather be focusing on the worship of their own self, their own ego, the entertainment. That generation will be feeding their ego. That's how they will entertain themselves. So how do we save this generation from decay, from decomposition? We as parents, as elders, we need to think about strategy to deal with this global phenomenon. So those of you who are thinkers, leaders, those of you who are policymakers in the Muslim world and in the non-Muslim world, you need to wake up and start rethinking. Your traditional way of dealing with the youth are over. You cannot simply think you will invite them in your madrasas, in your maktabs, in your mosque, and you give them education and that's it. They are not interested. So how do you educate? How do you Islamically build the personality of this youth to save themselves from the decomposition and decay, ethically, morally, ideologically, and save themselves from the hellfire? How do you deal with them? Number one, all you leaders and policymakers, all you educators, number one is to know this generation and their characteristics. And I only shared you 1.5 of their characteristics today. Number two, understand what these characteristics means to the youth. The good news is they still value friendship and family ties. Alhamdulillah. This generation still, because the way they're connecting to themselves is through friends, but they still feel and they say that we love our families and care for our families. They still have a connection with the families. So we are not at a total loss in how we engage with them, because they still love the families. So this TikTok generation, this generation Z or Z, still value family ties and family bonds. That means we still have a chance to connect and engage with them. How do you do that? By reprimanding them and telling them off? It's not going to work. It will drive them away from you. You need to be friendly. You need to befriend these youth, your sons and your daughters, and be in their shoes and say, look, I understand what you're going through. Let's talk about it. Only then they will then have confidence and trust with you. If you do not have this trust between you two, they will not listen to you. So ya shuyukh of the Muslim world, you need to devise curriculum, education curriculum, not the dars nizami that you had for last 300 years, but taking into account al-waqi', the reality of today. Because these youths are not only getting support from social media, they're getting support from the secular liberal individuals who are constantly encouraging and constantly supporting them to be what they think they should be. Even if they think that there is no God, they are being helped and supported in that cause. So we have to understand what and how we can deal with secular liberalism and atheism, because that's what's driving this culture. This culture in the youth is not driven by the religious people, because the religious people would not want the destruction of the youth. And what do I mean by destruction? Destruction of their self when it comes to the hereafter. Because on the hereafter, the only people who are saved from the punishment are the ones who are grateful to their Creator. The ones who are grateful to their Creator. But this generation is at a danger of being ungrateful to their Creator, as we are seeing. So, we want to live with these things. And you as leaders, you as policymakers, you who are in the pedagogy business, in education, you take the next step and you start devising curriculum, strategy to deal with the onslaught on our youth today, so that we can save this generation Z and we can build the next generation Alpha and mold them in a personality in which not only they will be successful in this life, but they will be successful in the hereafter. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله ولكم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. I thank you all for listening. May Allah, our Creator, give us the ability to understand what is going on in today's world, and then give us the ability to make changes accordingly. Those of you who have now questions to ask on the topic that I discussed, you're more than welcome to ask, bringing the topic that I touched upon first, about worshipping none but the one and only Creator. And then we move into TikTok generation. Any questions from anyone? If it's relevant, I'll take it.
Well, it could be to do with worship, but how I don't understand how are these people sorry, a lot of people in such a short space of time, going from a religious society to an atheist, a very big atheist society in such a short space of time.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. That's your name, right?
Yeah.
Chris. Chris asked a very important question. How did this generation, in a very short space of time, go from religiosity, being religious, to being non-religious? In a short space of time. I would say it didn't happen overnight. It wasn't a short space of time. This process had been ongoing for a long time, in different forms and different shapes. We are now seeing and witnessing some of the structure of the irreligious folks in bringing up this change. They have become more vocal, they have become more global, more fanatic. Richard Dawkins, an individual who is who should promote evolution, who should promote atheism, is fanatical. He will go about in to go against religious people and their dogmas and their doctrines. He will fight religious ideologies. His books, if you have read them, The God Delusion, and also read the book, refutes or debunks or criticizes the God Delusion too as well, to make a case like that. The Four Horsemen, you know who they are? Yes, in atheism, they are they're not just polemicists and dogmatists, they're evangelists. They're evangelizing, and because of the evangelism, because of the support by certain liberal nation state, they are gaining this momentum, and that is why this generation has become in the way they are now to how they were before. I hope that answers your question. Any others?
I have a question, Mansur.
Before you ask a question, here is the rule. Ask sensible questions.
Okay. I want to ask you about something in the Quran. Okay.
Related topic, rule number 2.
Okay.
What was the topic today? The topic was...
Ask if anybody any questions.
So because you are not listening, so let me remind you, so that you can be sensible. And 2 topics I touched today. Number 1, the belief in one and only God, one creator, and the irrationality and the incoherence of more than one creator in the belief of that. I said it doesn't matter to believe only not unbelievable. Number 2, I touched upon Generation Z and their characteristics and the challenges that we face today, and how we can help this generation to bring about a social change in which we make it safer for them to be successful in this life and in the hereafter. These are the 2 topics, and I would appreciate you ask me questions related to these 2, one or the other topics. You're more than welcome to ask any questions on that.
So Quran claim